There we go. Hey everyone, I'd like to introduce great musician, producer, uh, roller coaster enthusiast, Johan Lenox. It's Johan, right?
Yeah, you got it right. How's it going?
Awesome. No, it's fine, man. Just same old life. Life is just pain in the ass, but whatever we got to
Yeah,
go through it.
for sure.
Nah, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Same thing, pretty much. But yeah, I just got back to LA. I was traveling on the East Coast for a bit, and I'm here for I guess a while. But just finishing the stuff for my album, and I've got like a classical album I'm probably gonna put up before that, which I'll announce pretty soon. So a
No,
lot,
that's
a lot
cool.
going on.
Yeah, I saw. I was watching like what was it, like a 6 or 7 minute biography kind of a view
Oh yeah,
on a website, and it's saying you grew up just knowing classical music, like that's all you essentially knew and learned, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
that's what your that was your bread and butter forever. Did you know like how to play every instrument, or just sort of arrange them, or
Yeah, mostly composing and arranging. I mean, the only thing I really play is piano, and then voice, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it's like if you study composing, like you're learning a lot about like how to write an oboe part, or like how to make a brass section blend well, or all that kind of stuff. And then also just a lot about how to structure that type of music so that you make a piece of music that doesn't have like a verse and a chorus or any kind of vocal, that you can still make it flow in a natural way and kind of make sense. So that was really what I was studying at the time.
and was that your choice or your parents, or you just grew liking to it, or
I mean, initially I was playing piano, mostly just kind of casually, like as a hobby, because we had a piano in our house. I was really lucky that was there, because I think that's really where all this really started. But we I guess I got into um, composing because I didn't really like the structure of playing other people's music on piano and just having to learn it perfectly and just kind of execute that. I was much more interested in like improvising and making stuff up. And then I got really into film soundtracks, like Indiana Jones was kind of the first one that really did that for me. And
mm,
just so then we started going. My parents started taking me to see orchestra concerts where you could see like John Williams conducting the Indiana Jones soundtrack with a live orchestra, stuff like that. And I think that was when I was like, I want to do that. So I kind of got on a path of trying to write music for orchestras.
and let's see, where does this roller coaster enthusiasm come from? Like, can you are you kind of like a Rain Man at that? Do you know like every sort of roller coaster? Like, I could tell you a state, and you could,
Probably a little bit. I mean, you could try
yeah,
it. There's like ones that are more famous than others. Like there's lots of crap just floating around at like carnivals and smaller parks that I'm probably not as familiar with. But yeah, like the major ones. I mean, it's not just like having an encyclopedic knowledge of stuff, because I don't really have that for anything. But it's more just like I just watch a lot of content related to that stuff, and just after a while, the same things start to come up, and you start to be like, oh, that's that one, that's that one. But yeah.
it. And are you just like into what, like the way it's built, or you actually like riding
I
them,
love
like the
riding
thrill
them.
of
It's
it?
all of it. I mean, I love riding them. I love the thrill of it. I also think I really like the just kind of the theater around that stuff, like just parks. I mean, I don't really apply as much to Disney, but for whatever reason, the combination of just the like engineering and the sort of like the physical sensation of riding a roller coaster, but combining that with just sort of the theater of how a park is put together. Which I mean, I did a lot of musical theater when I was in high school and college, and I'm really into that. I'm really into stuff like Cirque du Soleil. I just love like giant productions, kind of just in general, and I think it probably hits that for me a little bit too.
Oh, it's true. I didn't think about that. That there's theater to certain roller coasters. Like I guess there would be an act one where it's getting you ready for the scary part, and then
I
a
mean,
act
some of them,
two.
yeah, but I'm saying even more just in a more general sense, just like just the idea of like big expensive, large scale entertainment, just as just the theatricality of it, really. Not like just is just something that I think I'm drawn to just across the board. Like I love like the Olympics opening ceremony for this. I just love stuff like that, just big
Oh, okay.
theatrical stuff. And I feel like parks kind of have to do a lot of that too.
Yeah. Do you know how many roller coasters you've like ridden in your life? Have you ridden
Yeah,
quite a
it's
bit?
like around 150, which is not that many because I'm friends with a lot of people that are like that do this as like sort of either their main hobby or even like some of them actually like make a living just making content around roller coaster stuff, and like some of them have been on like 1,000 of them or something. But yeah, about like 150, somewhere around that.
I think I've only ridden one roller coaster.
Oh
I
yeah,
hate I hate the if I wanted to ride something so fearful, I would just get on a highway and go up a really high interstate exit. I feel
yeah.
like
It's kind of funny because like the fear, I get that that's like a thing for like a lot of just I guess non-enthusiast kind of normal people who are into this. Like that it's sort of like they get scared and they actually think that they're like the ride's gonna fall apart, or they're just like. But I never really understood that aspect of it. I mean, I guess maybe when I was really young, but like it's like obviously the ride's safe. Like it's given like that, thousands of rides. So it's like maybe there's like an irrational fear that you look over the hill and you're just like, oh
mhm,
no, this is scary. But it doesn't really hit
definitely.
for me. I mean, it's just kind of like obviously it's fine. So it's but there is like a physical sensation where your stomach is just kind of like, what the hell is going on? And like,
Yeah,
so
definitely. I imagine.
I still get that, but I'd sort of like the rational part of me always knows I'm totally safe, and so I don't compare it to like I don't think of it as like a risk taking kind of thing, or in that
Yeah.
sense. It's yeah,
I think the only roller coaster I've ever ridden cuz I'm here in Texas is the Roadrunner at Six Flags.
right.
And it just it scared.
Are you near San Antonio, or are you near the Fort
Yeah,
Worth one?
I'm
Okay,
in San Antonio, and
okay.
that Roadrunner, man, just scared. I don't know, and it's like probably
That's
a
for like
baby.
children, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a baby roller coaster compared
No.
to like whatever else you could ride, like the Batman or whatever
Yeah, they have some
other
good
shit.
stuff there. I have a friend who lives, I think, near there, who's always talking about the Iron Rattler and a couple other ones that are really
Oh
nice.
yeah, the Rattler when there was just Fiesta Texas and not Six Flags.
Yeah,
That
now
was
it's
like
called
the
Iron
big deal.
Rattler,
Yeah.
but I have to get on that shit.
I I was wondering, like I don't know if you've seen My Strange Addiction, where like there was a woman that was in love with a carnival ride. Do you think you could ever
That's funny.
sexually be attracted to a
I
roller
don't. Yeah, I
coaster?
don't think so. I
You
guess you never know though. Anything's
don't
possible.
consider them like male or female in sort of a
No,
like a
I actually find
sexual
that
way?
shit kind of weird. Sometimes people talk about it using she, like the way people talk about like big boats. They're always a she. I find that incredibly strange that people still do that. Like you go on Wikipedia and they'll talk about like a major ship that was built like 10 years ago. And literally the entire article is written to be like, she had her maiden voyage. It's just like fucking very weird to me. I'm like, I think it's like not it. Yeah, I honestly think I bet that'll kind of end also in the next couple decades. But yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah, like the
very
way
weird.
things are going now. Yeah,
Yeah, it's very weird.
or get even more ridiculous. I guess it could go either way really.
Possibly.
Uh I was saying here and then I was reading about how like or on your little interview or documentary that you heard My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and that kind of like flipped a switch on you or
Yeah,
changed
yeah,
kind of like and I love that album too. Like I'm not much into Kanye's first few albums. They're good, but that
yeah.
one really like
That's interesting. Yeah,
resonated with
I
me.
think the vast majority of people, it's like the first three and really the first two that are the ones that people are obsessed with, which is kind of funny because I had the same experience. Obviously, I got into Dark Twisted Fantasy before having really ever heard those first albums. I might have
Hmm.
heard like Gold Digger on the radio, stuff like that, but I really didn't have any idea what was going on with that music. And like, it is interesting, like, because people were immediately like, "Oh, you got to check out the original stuff. That's the real shit." It's just kind of like I do like it. I've grown to really love a lot of that older stuff,
Hmm.
but it doesn't have as much of a personal connection to just the things that I'm interested in, which is obviously like the symphonic scale of like Darkest Fantasy, and also Yeezus, which I really like just for being kind of experimental and just that level of like just
Hmm.
single mindedness in terms of the music. I think is just incredible.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about Jesus. You just explained that is so different, so raw and almost grungy type. In me, I'm not a, like a as much of a connoisseur or professional as you might be because you actually know how to put music together. But I
Sure.
imagine that one was like different, but in a good way, as far as like you saying from
Yeah.
Yeezus.
I mean, I think it pissed a lot of people off a little bit. I mean, I think a lot of people were just like, "What the hell is this shit?" And I think that's good to do from time to time. I think it. You probably know I did this big classical orchestra concert that used a lot of music from Jesus to kind of make a point about, I guess, what a composer is, I guess, and like that music served really well for that because a lot of it doesn't it doesn't tend to fall into just like normal production of like verse and chorus and drums, bass, guitars, whatever. It doesn't have, or just a sample with drums. Like it's not sort of just organized in a way that just feels like every other song. Like everything on there is very like specific sonic choices. Just be like, yeah, well, the drums are. It's like the snare is also pitched, and it's like this one sound, and the kick is this other sound, and that also is on a note, and it's distorted, and it has this specific sound. And then there's like a melody element, and that is this sound, and it's like it feels much more like composed for instruments than it does sort of just like let's just fill out the sound and have like a beat going and just have like a verse and a chorus. Like it's very every decision on that feels like incredibly tight and incredibly considered in a way that kind of reminds me of, I guess, the way a lot of classical
Y-
composition is.
And then what'd you think of 808s and Heartbreak? Because I really like that one
It's
too. I know
great.
that one.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's like for me, I don't find a lot of the songs on there is fun to listen to. I mean, I think maybe half of the songs on there I really love, and then the other half I feel like kind of like interesting sort of misses for me. But like, I definitely understand that like that album is sort of what started it all in terms of that sound, and I think that's really where you started to get into this era of just incredible experimentation with like melodies in rap music, and I think that's when pop music got really interesting again. I think.
Hmm. And as far before you heard by Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, were you only exclusively into like classical music, or did you listen to any other radio, pop, or rap or
Nothing that was
anything?
current or yeah, no pop or hip hop really. I mean, there was like, yeah, like primarily I was listening to classical music because I kind of just like treated what I listened to as an extension of what I was studying. So I think that was what I would put on because it was just the world I was in
Hmm.
otherwise. But I also listened to like a lot of musical theater, and that was sort of like a guilty pleasure for me actually at that time because I feel like the classical world mostly did not consider that like serious music, or at least that's how it was presented to me, uh, especially when I was younger. But I loved musicals. I loved there's like random exceptions. Like there was some pop music that I would became acquainted with when I was in like singing in a cappella groups in high school and stuff. So that like I got into like I don't know if you know like Ben Folds is, but like he's like a piano playing kind of
I've heard that
pop
name.
kind of guy, but
Hmm.
never really hit like mainstream. Very kind of like indie rock almost, I guess,
Hmm.
but for like piano music. So and he's sort of like a Billy Joel kind of like a successor, I guess. So like I was really into that music, which is like kind of nerdy music to be into, but it kind of fit with the milieu of all this other stuff I was listening to, which was all kind of like music nerd music. Billy Joel, there's like random exceptions. I did like know all of the Nirvana discography like very well because my brother had been really into it, and it kind of got
Mm.
passed down to me. And even he was pretty late to that. Like it was kind of well after that had been mid mainstream. But then when I got to it, it was like almost at the point where it started more like it started to come back by that point. But like that music is super interesting, very weird, just from like a musical perspective, regardless of any of the cultural context around it. Like it's just very like odd kind of atonal chord progressions, and the melody writing is spectacular, and like the structures of the songs often are pretty interesting. So I think that stuff that was sort of like the one thing that I would describe as like cool that I was into. But yeah, at that time it was really not current though. So yeah.
I'll say you look at it a lot different the way you're raised with the classical music. You must I don't know, either be interesting to you like you said, or torture you with how they structure their music. I don't know what you would call like Nirvana like basic musicians or just bands. Compared to composers or
Well, I
however you
think it's
say.
like yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't really think of it that way. It's possible that at the time I would have a little bit more, but I'm not sure I ever really had like a real. worldview, especially with respect to like the Nirvana stuff, uh, as to how that fit in with like the classical stuff. I don't really think they intersected much in my mind. Now I would say you could pretty clearly look at the Nirvana stuff and say that like it's compositionally pretty tight. I think part of that is because he plays mainly power chords on the guitar,
Hmm.
which end up really just being like orchestration of like one note. It's like really his guitar parts are like a melody that's just really fucking beefed up with the power chords and distortion and stuff. And then he's singing another melody. So you really just end up with something that's kind of like a two-part counterpoint. And it's pretty good counterpoint, in my opinion, for what it is. So it's like, even just from that perspective, I think that their music is closer to what I find interesting, just on a purely musical level. I think there's value in a lot of music that I don't find that interesting on a musical level, but which exists and just as a cultural statement is kind of challenging or provocative. And I think a lot of music that gets like well reviewed or ends up being influential has that and isn't. It's not like doing a lot that's that interesting from like just purely like if you just wrote out the sheet music as a song, you wouldn't find that much to look at. But I think the
Hmm.
Nirvana stuff is actually pretty interesting in that respect. So it probably makes sense that I was drawn to it.
No, and that is interesting to me because I know. Well, you said you got it passed down from your brother, and I was curious, like what other music you might have gotten maybe from your parents or your friends or your brothers. Because I know when me growing up, I had an older sister and my
Yeah.
mother. They would pass down their music, so I was listening to like Aqua, Ace of Base, real female
Yeah,
pop
yeah, yeah.
Spice Girls. And it was just like I love it now. Like I love pop music, like female led pop music, but it's like it's because that's all I grew up with. So
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
Nirvana came from your older sibling. So just wondering
It's
if your
definitely
parents.
nostalgic. Yeah, it's definitely
Yeah.
nostalgic for me in that sense. But I really think it like I think I like it for what it is musically. But it is fair that like you're right in the sense that I didn't get into like other bands from that era. Like I don't have like a nostalgic connection to like '90s grunge in general. I mean, I kind of do, I guess, a little bit. Like I'll throw it on. I like it because it reminds me of Nirvana. But I think my interest in Nirvana is partly just like I did like a full deep dive just on the music at the time, and I know all that stuff, but I never listened to like a single Pearl Jam song or a single like Stone Temple Pilot song or something like that at the time. So it was like I think my experience of music was always very like free of cultural context. Like it was just kind of like this music sounds interesting, but I never watched any of the videos. I didn't know anything about what it meant culturally. I didn't understand. I never watched any shows. And that was and again like the pop music that I was connected to even at the time was none of it was like remotely current. So it's not like I had friends who were talking about it or to do it. So it's like my relationship with the music was very kind of abstracted just literally like I like this as a composition. This sounds good. It makes my head feel good. It doesn't there was never any kind of like, oh, what's he saying in the lyrics? Like what does this mean? Like what, what or let alone sort of understanding that like, the rise of grunge was like a rebellion against like, whatever, like hair metal
Yeah.
and all that type of stuff. Like I just none of that would have had any significance to me at all. And I didn't again, like I didn't know any of what was going on. Like my friends were probably listening to like Eminem or shit like that. Like and then later my friends were listening to, like indie rock, like Arcade Fire, stuff like that. And I never found that interesting at all. I just kind of my relationship to music was just completely divorced from any of what my non-classical music friends were listening to. But within the classical music world, we all would talk about classical and stuff like that. So I think there was a bit more of like a peer relationship with it. But we're talking about music often that's like hundreds of years old, and being like, oh, have you listened to this yet? And it's just like that's something that's a totally different sort of relationship to it. I think.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's dropping. Well, I'm sure now
No, they
people
are. I mean,
drop.
we were writing contemporary. Yeah, there
Yeah,
was some of that too. Like, oh, have you heard the new
like they're
piece by?
dropping new classical music.
No, literally, yeah. Like, there's,
Yeah.
like the teachers that I studied with were all doing it. I mean, like a composer I really looked up to at the time was this dude named Nico Muley, who was very hot in like the New York. He's worked with a lot of indie bands too, but he's basically just like a composer and wrote a lot of operas and put out a lot of albums. And I was putting other classical composers onto some of that stuff, being like, yo, this is really cool what he's doing here. And but it's just different. I mean, it's just there's not like that sort of immediacy. Like you could be into that music 5 years after the fact and still be kind of current. It's just not the sense of
Hmm.
just like everybody I know is talking about the new like Uzi album or something like that. It's just like that's a totally different thing, I think.
And so when you did, listen to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and it inspired you to write this like Kanye esque like symphony, right? Uh,
Yeah, I wouldn't even say that. I mean, it was sort of like pretty much just like direct replications of a few of the songs from Yeezus, but for orchestra, and then performing them alongside pieces of music by Beethoven, and just being like, these are interesting compositional techniques being used in both of these things, and kind of almost like from my perspective, the point. Obviously, part of it was like just for normal people who like Kanye to come through and get to experience an orchestra concert and maybe hear some Beethoven. Like that was cool. But from my perspective, the more interesting point was facing the classical music world and just saying like, really, that I think that what Kanye has managed to do is more interesting and more similar in spirit to like what a composer like Beethoven was doing in his time than what a lot of contemporary classical people are doing. And so part of it was just to be like, maybe we should be paying more attention to this and like trying to understand, because that's kind of what got me to move to LA and to get into the type of music I'm making now, was just being like, wait a second, there are actually people doing pretty interesting stuff that's reaching like a really big and kind of contemporary audience. And I think classical music could do that. And I've always been working on that idea since I was in high school. And the Kanye stuff felt like evidence of that. So I think that was kind of the premise of the concert.
and in that concert, I haven't heard it, but you said did it open doors for you, like to meet, these like Kanye or
You're
any?
cutting out for. Do you mind just saying that again? It was cutting out for a
Oh,
second.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Uh, did and this open doors for you, like to
yeah,
help
yeah, yeah.
like produce with, more I don't know, esteemed
Yeah, it's so
artists
weird.
or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not a mic issue. It might be an internet issue. It just goes totally silent in the middle of. I don't think it's the mic. I heard half what you said, but it just cuts out
okay.
completely. We'll just see how it
Did,
goes. But I heard your question though. Yeah. So that concert got me into. Yeah, it got me connected to Vic Mensa initially through his manager David Appleton, whose friend came to the show, and then Vic was very generous and helped me get into writing strings really, which is for his music, which is something I hadn't done prior to that. Really, I mean, I've been wanting to do that, but it just yeah, that was sort of the first artist who I really did arranging and composition for, and then along the way started producing for him. Met No ID through him. I met a lot of artists like Big Sean and Snow Allegra through No ID, and it just kind of kept going from there. And then also around that time, I met Mike Dean, who worked on some of the Kanye stuff, like especially some of my favorite albums. He did a lot of the mixing and production and like just all the synth stuff, especially guitar solos. And like he kind of took me under his wing a little bit, introduced me to Kanye, and I got to work on some of that stuff. I got to work with Travis Scott on Astroworld and with Like on that, and it's kind of where everything started from a producing standpoint.
no, that's amazing. To go like from that to meeting him. And how was that first meeting him? Was it like, I don't know, meeting a god, or just was he just like a regular dude,
With
Kanye?
Kanye, oh, yeah, yeah, it was like it wasn't like that crazy. Like it was sort of like a relatively like intense period of time because he was making 5 albums in 5 weeks. This was like a stunt he kind of did in 2018 for different artists,
Jeez.
including himself. I'm sure you remember, but yeah, that was like it was just kind of business. It was just sort of like, okay, here's what you do, blah blah blah. Okay, and then I would do something and be like, I like this, I didn't like that. It just was like pretty focused. But he was plenty nice to me and kind of just yeah, very on his game.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to have any opinion on the way he's been acting now, like so not outrageous, but
It's pretty outrageous. I'd say that's probably the best word, honestly. I think it's definitely. I think the
yeah,
outrage is something that kind of fuels him, and I think that was
and
true way before this. Like you remember, like when he went on TV and said George Bush doesn't care about black people, which like
yeah,
I kind of agree with, but still, I think from his perspective, that was like saying the thing that no one will let you say, and it pissed a lot of people off. And same with the Taylor Swift thing, which where he went on stage and kind of interrupted her acceptance speech for her VMA award, I think, and
Mhm.
just it's like, again, in that case, I think some people were like, well, he's speaking up for like black excellence, and like Beyonce really should have got, but then Beyonce clearly was looking at him like, what are you doing, man? Like, but it's like, I think
Yeah.
his perspective, like, he's always been doubted, he's always been told, well, you can't do that, you can't get into fashion, you're a rapper, it's just like, and it's like, I think that notion fuels him, and I think he just maybe doesn't really see much of a distinction between things like that and then things like just wearing the Trump hat, or like um, you know saying stuff about like Hitler and stuff, which is, I think, for him, it's just a lot. It's mostly, I think, just like outrage kind of
Well, to
stoking
me,
the.
like whenever I remember Yeezus came out and he had the song "I Am a God," and it was kind of like
Yeah,
almost a parody. Like people, it wasn't him saying he was a god; it was that people were treating him like he was a god. Like his
yeah,
opinion mattered that much. And I guess at a certain point, I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know if you've ever reached like those. I mean, he's reached a different level of fame where
yeah.
people are completely watch him under a microscope. But
Well, celebrities are treated like gods, I think, in our society, and it is kind of weird and pretty unhealthy. I mean, I also think I didn't used to feel this way, but I kind of increasingly am like, and I don't know how you would like. Basically, we're all on social media, and so everyone's thoughts are just very public all the time if they want them to be. And I don't really know what the solution is, but I think it's better. People repost this screen grab of like a New York Times article where the headline was just, it was like a opinion piece. That was, the headline was just, "We should all know less about each other." I kind of think it's like people post it as a joke sometimes when somebody comes out with something like really cringe or whatever. But like, I think that is kind of true. I don't know if there's any solution to it, but I kind of am like the cliche, and you hear it more from like the right wing of stuff, is like you're an artist, just shut up and make music, or like shut up and dribble, or whatever type of,
yeah, yeah,
and like
yeah.
I sort of like used to kind of bristle at that, because a lot of artists, especially athletes and stuff, have been standing up for causes that I really agree with, and I think it's good to using their platforms for that. But I do think a lot of this stuff is also just like, why are we asking somebody who like is like really good at music their opinion on politics? Like, why is that something we're supposed to like? I think it would be kind of better if a lot of places didn't publish what people say, like just didn't. And I know it drives clicks and stuff, but it's like, is that actually a story? Like, Kanye said some dumb stuff about like some stuff like that he clearly knows nothing about. He's like not educated on politics, I think, very well. He's not like an expert on that topic. Like, why does anybody care? And I guess we have to care because he has a big platform on his social media. Like, people do listen, and a lot of sketchy, probably actual Nazi sympathizers like took what he said as validating, and I think that is
Hmm.
really bad. But I still just kind of feel like the amount of amplification that the mainstream media did on that, and on many, many other things on both the left and the right, where people just say like really extreme or outrageous things, or just say stuff that is clearly ignorant or uninformed. It's like, yeah, they're like a musician. Like, why would they know anything about like like you've probably seen Kanye do interviews about the Trump stuff, and people will press him on specific political things, and he clearly has never even heard of the stuff they're talking about. Like, that was never what he was drawn to about Trump. He likes the sort of, again, I say, like the theatrics of it, and he sort of relates to the underdog. Like, people really don't like Trump. People think he shouldn't say this or that. Like, he relates to that. He has no idea what Trump's doing in office because he doesn't pay attention to politics like that, and most people don't, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, why are we listening to his opinion at all on this, pro or con? And the same goes for if he came out against Trump. It's just like, again, like his opinion on this is irrelevant. Like, why do we care at all? And I kind of wish we could go back to a time where everyone understood that, like, most musicians and actors, especially, and athletes and everybody else, just like, they do not know what they're talking about outside of the work that they do, and nor does anybody else often. It's just like, if you want to hear political opinions, get a political expert. Uh,
Yeah.
that's like that'd be a less of a waste of everybody's time, in my opinion.
And I wouldn't even say they're allowed. They're not allowed to have their own opinions, but don't take them
That's
so
what I'm
like
saying. Of course,
strongly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So many people have the dumbest opinions in the world,
Yeah.
and I don't want to hear them. And we should all not want to hear them.
Yeah,
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 if like the president says something stupid about what he's doing, then yes, I would definitely like to know about that. But like my neighbor across the street probably has some crazy opinions on stuff, and I don't have to know that, and I don't want to know that. And like, yeah, there are famous musicians who make great music that I love. I still don't want to know their opinion on stuff that doesn't have to do with music. I don't think it's relevant, you know.
yeah.
And I think it's
I've
weird that we're in a place where everyone thinks it is.
And I hate that like people don't want to separate the art from the person either. Like they
Yeah,
immediately like with Kanye, I think he's like one of the best musicians, and I know you would agree uh about that. But then like people want to not care about his music at all because of his political opinions or whatever, and it's like, dude, you can't
I mean, that's their
like
right, but and I think
yeah
it can get tricky. Obviously, like I come from a world where I never was listening to music for lyrics or whatever, and like the music I listened to was pretty abstracted, and I know that it exists in a context and it interacts with other music that came before it and after it, but like it's not like I get that it's harder if somebody starts rapping in the middle of the song about stuff you don't want to hear about, or that like they start saying crazy shit in the song. And I get that there's a bit more of a connection there, but you know, like I yeah, for me, yeah, the art has become inextricable from the artist in a way that I don't think it really always was. Like the performance of being an artist is a large part like who they are on social media, what they do outside of music, what you know, their Twitter or whatever. And Kanye was, you know, benefited from that, you know, for a period with Twitter. But like I really think that that's not always how it was. I think back in the day, you really could just be like, this is great art. Oh yeah, apparently he's kind of an asshole, and that's all you know. Like, but we're like inundated with people's personas and their personalities, and it kind of
hmm
and it's become the art form. And I don't really know what the solution is, but I think that that has made it harder for people to make that separation. And I don't really know. It's
Well, do you think like back in the day Beethoven probably had slaves? Like you think they'd say
yeah,
something like
I'm not literally sure if that's true, but yeah, but
you
sure,
know,
there's a lot of I mean, there yeah, definitely people have talked about like Bach, like you know, I don't know, just I guess literally I don't even fucking remember. There was some sort of thing about his. You know what
yeah,
it was actually? I don't know if you saw the movie Tar. I'm pretty sure it was in that. They have a
no.
scene that depicts like a student asking the teacher like why we're studying Bach if he was like a misogynist or something, and they have some evidence to support that. And it's
Oh
like,
my god, like
well,
come
I mean,
on.
I don't know. I don't think it's not worth raising those questions, but it's just kind of like, yeah, I just think that's not really I don't think it's good, I guess. If you want good music and good art, I don't think that making it primarily about people's personality is the way to get there.
Well, yeah, but to me it's just separating it. Like if you want to talk about those issues, talk about those, but you want to talk about his music, talk about it in a whole different.
Which is mostly what happens. I mean, most study of Bach does not involve any discussion of who he was as a person. It's literally just look at this counterpoint, look at how this works, or whatever. So I don't think that that's really being threatened right now, but I think it is like harder to say like what a current artist should do about this, or like how you know how we as a society I guess can sort of de-emphasize some of the bullshit I think a bit, but
hmm
it's pretty hard to put it back right now. It feels like the persona is driving a lot of this stuff.
And this album you're just well, I mean you didn't just put it out. It's been out I believe for a while. The what do you want to be when you grow up? I believe
Yeah.
that's what the acronym stands for. What did you get that name from? What do you want to be when you grow up?
It's I mean all the songs just kind of have to do with figuring out where I fit in the world and where my generation fits in the world, and how we, you know, what it means to be an adult and whether we're on our way or not, and what we thought that was going to look like when we were younger, and then realizing that there's sort of this just endless, you know, arrested development kind of situation that a lot of people are in, where we're like, you know, getting older and still playing video games and still eating like shitty food and kind of not married and don't have a house and don't have a kid and all that kind of stuff, which might be okay, but it's just very hard to know what we're supposed to do, because the path used to be so clearly set out and things are just very ambiguous now. So yeah, to me it's like, and then I like the idea. I put the kid on the cover, and some
hmm
of it, the videos kind of go back to like me as a child wondering what I wanted to be when I grow up, and just checking where I'm at with it. And then there's a monologue, which I'm sure you remember, which is in the second to last song, which is just that my girlfriend actually gave. Just I interviewed her, and she was talking about like how it never hurts to ask that question even now. Like even now you can say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Even though maybe we're grown up, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
good. It's like we live in a world where we have that kind of freedom to choose, and it is scary, and the world is very uncertain right now. But I think that puts the onus on us to just constantly say, like, is this what I want to be doing with my life? Is this what I'm hoping my life is going to look like? And I'm pretty sure she just said that, and then I was like, that could be the title of the album. So I think it came from her. I mean, I don't think it was a coincidence, but the next album I'm calling, I guess we'll find out. And I wrote that with a songwriter who I like a lot. We co-wrote it, and I'm pretty sure he suggested the title while we were talking about the subject matter, not knowing that, like, not, and I neither of us realized at the time, but I say that all the time, and I had been before that, like that phrase. I guess we'll find out. Is that what kind of worked out? It's kind of coincidence, but yeah.
And what did you want to be when you grew up? Like back when
Well,
you
there was a roller coaster designer phase, of course. There was like a construction vehicle operator phase. There was like a dinosaur paleontologist phase, and all the
Mm-hmm.
usual kid stuff, boy stuff, I guess, especially. But yeah, I think pretty much as soon as the bug bit me with the classical stuff, I wanted to be a composer, and I knew that much, and then kind of evolved into knowing that I wanted to do something where I was bringing classical music to like a bigger and younger audience. I think I knew that even in high school, and pretty much has never changed.
Sure. I want to play a quick sample of the "You Up" because this is a song that you released the single of, and I really I'm not saying connected to it. I really liked it, and I'm not really into like guy singers because I'm not like into dudes,
I
but
just wanna feel like I'm enough. You but I find out where the fuck it's up.
I just the beat's great, and you did the
Thanks.
beat, you did
Say
the
you into me,
Yeah.
I know you lying.
vocals and everything.
You
So
know I'm meant to be, I
I
know
don't
the
know.
signs. It's only
I don't
certain
know.
cause the
I don't know what to
bad
say other
times
than like it's a good song, and it's one of those things where I'm
Thanks.
like, why isn't this bigger?
I know I wrote it like 2 years before it came out. I think it was sonically, it's definitely on a wave that like I think if I had dropped it a couple years earlier, it would have been a lot bigger. But it was just hard
Unless
to.
you're like at that, because I've heard musicians say like I've said what I wish this were bigger, and they're like I don't really want it to be
Oh no
bigger,
no no! I want my shit to be as big as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard some people say, "No, I don't want to be that big." I guess maybe the weight of the way you're composing and stuff like that with the people that you do. Sounds like you want to like have your stuff everywhere and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, like the end goal is to just put like classical music in stadiums, pretty much, and I don't think there's any way to do that without getting really famous first. So, I mean, yeah, if that's what has to happen, I'm down. But I don't know if there's another way. I'm down to try that too. I just kind of want to just build what I'm doing into the biggest possible thing and just really have an impact on society.
no, it's badass. I want to show you one last thing. It's sort of like a I don't know. This I have a little brother, and he put out like he's a wannabe rapper, and he made
Nice.
this beat. I just This is the first I've ever put out of it. I wanted to have your opinion on it.
Okay.
I'll play like a minute of it.
Sure.
Uh, Here we go. His name is Dobby, which is like Spanish for David. Okay,
Yeah.
and he goes by
Take
it.
the mysterious darkness and turn it into light. Take the mysterious darkness and turn it into light. Take the mysterious darkness and turn it into light. Take the mysterious
And I don't know if
darkness
he's
and
on
turn it into
drugs or
light.
what, but he's a very
Mysterious darkness, darkness,
you know,
darkness,
uh,
darkness.
I don't know if he's on
Mysterious
drugs
darkness,
or if he
darkness,
needs
darkness, darkness.
medication because I know I take a lot of
Mysterious darkness,
medication to
darkness, darkness,
control
darkness.
myself.
Mysterious darkness, 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 darkness.
I kind of like how weird it is. I
How
mean, yeah,
broke
the
is my
beat feels a
vision?
little.
Not bound to a
The
religion.
drums, I think, could be a
Never
little
speaking
stronger,
fiction. Light
Hmm.
up the place like electrician.
and
Hit
then
it
the
starts
mix
like a
could be a little
kid
stronger.
ignition.
Yeah, I
On
think he's just
But I
doing
like
this.
the vibe of it,
my
and I kind of like the
heritage is
video.
different. I
Yeah,
can't say a little
he's
bit about
you
me
know, I don't know
without
how you are with
explaining.
your family, but
Strange,
it's like
but
you
it's never
can't pick your
risen to
family, you know.
disturb your intuition
No, I
or
like it. I
vision.
like the energy. Also,
Music for their
5:36
entertainment
seems
is
kind
a
of
thing
long,
that
although I guess
Yeah,
editing
fascinates
could work.
I'll say that.
business.
That's why I wanted to just play a minute of it, but yeah, no, I just
I like
wanted
the
your
vibe.
opinion on
I like
that.
his vocal delivery. I think, yeah, definitely just maybe if he can team up with another producer or someone who just has a little bit stronger idea how to just mix it and maybe tweak the drums a bit. I think that would be the next step for what he's doing. But yeah, get
I'll-
the vocal a little crispier. But yeah,
yeah, no, I appreciate your your opinions on that. I just thought it'd be funny to show you that, but I
oh yeah.
really do appreciate that, and I appreciate your time
I used
too.
to do a lot of that. I used to have a Discord, and literally every Wednesday I would just come in and listen to like 20 songs from random people who sent them to me. And it was interesting, but it got really tiring after a while. But I tried to help
Oh,
people.
can't imagine, especially if you're trying to do your own music and then you have a social life, or you're trying to live. So that does sound really
I mean, it was only an
exhausting.
hour and a half, but yeah, it's more just exhausting trying to come up. Like after a while, you just find yourself saying the same shit every time.
Yeah. well, they can find your album. What do you want to be when you grow up? Like, is it streaming everywhere and all
Yeah,
that?
it's just the initials. Yeah, yeah, it's on the screen, but WDYWTBWYGU. And I have a lot coming. I have a classical album coming soon. I have another solo album with my singing on it coming probably at the end of the year.
No, that's great, and I really appreciate the time you give me today. Uh, is great just to like have a conversation with you, and yeah, I wish you all the success you want. I think you deserve it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I hope it all like comes to you. I don't know, manifests or however you want to imagine it. But I hope it does.
yeah. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
It's a lot of good questions. I'm glad we did this.
yeah. No, thank you, and thank everyone for listening. See you later.